Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hey everybody, welcome in. Jesse Montano, Meghan Angley. Meghan Angley, I guess that way, not that way. Avs Postgame Live, Avs at Bolts, and Meghan, for the first time in the 2025-2026 season, we are talking about back-to-back regulation losses for the Avs, and they both come in the state of Florida on a tough East Coast road trip here. I thought the Avs looked tired tonight. They looked like they were at the end of a tough road trip. We're going to get into all of it. We're going to go over all the goals, get into some of the finer points of the game here. But I guess, Meghan, how you doing? Overall thoughts on that game? How are you doing? How did that game make you feel?
It was disappointing. I expected a little bit more of an energized response on the heels of the Landeskog news to rally around their captain in his absence. And it was one of those tests of a game too. Like, they're without Taves, they're without Landeskog. They haven't experienced much adversity yet through this season. It would have been a great statement game to put to rest any lack of credit maybe that they've been getting through this point, that they're just so deep and well constructed. And as much as I'm saying that, it's difficult in the context of the second game in a back-to-back. And it was clear from the jump that they just weren't as energized as I would have hoped, with an early power play opportunity that I think, will punctuate why I end up so disappointed in this game. But it's like Jared Bednar says, you make hay when the sun shines. And bigger than that, a tip of the cap to the Tampa Bay Lightning, who played a really great game of hockey, and the Avs just didn't quite seize the opportunities that were few and far between, like that early power play, when they had them. And so two really good hockey teams, but one wasn't very rested. And in the Tampa Bay Lightning, they were extremely competitive. I think they feasted on the fact that the Avs had fatigue at points in this game and didn't always make great decisions. So I think, going back to why I said I was disappointed, it felt a little self-inflicted, because there were so many moments in this game where the Avs felt like they were equally in the fight. So to not come away with the result, then it's like, well, one team was just a little more competitive tonight, and that was the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Well, and we'll get into it later. I've got it as a bullet point here, but a sign of what you're talking about, of just like kind of the low energy. I don't know if low energy is a little bit too harsh, but just, points at different times of the night where you could tell the Avs were just running low on gas. The fourth line played really late into the game. They took regular shifts late into the game, and I thought that was not only a reward for good shifts from that line at times, but I just thought a sign of the fact that, yes, this is a tired group. And yeah, you've dealt with a couple injuries along the way on this trip. I want to circle back. I don't want to get too caught up on it right now, but I do want to circle back and talk about the Landeskog effect of it all, because I do think that that's something that just kind of stunned them a bit on this team. I think, on this trip. I think rightfully guys were really worried initially, and then Corey Massac reported that Gabe Landeskog did come back to Denver. I think that was, and this is maybe going to sound silly, and I'm not making an excuse or anything, I'm just reading body language here. It just looked like that stunned the team a bit on this trip, and it took a little bit of the mojo. And again, I think they battled through it admirably, and again, they were competitive in both of these games. But I just think that the Landeskog thing shook them a bit. I think they're going to come back, get on this nice homestand here, and be all right. But let's just start getting into it here. Do you have anything from the first period besides the Gensel goal that I want to get to here? But it came really late in the first, so I just wanted to see if there was anything that jumped out to you first period that you wanted to get to before we got to the Jake Gensel goal late in the first period.
I think the issues with Chernak late in this game stem from some things that went uncalled in the first period. It's not something that I'm going to pin this game on. I think the Avs have to absorb some of that because a lot of this game was reminiscent of playoff hockey in a lot of ways. There were PTSD flashback moments where there were aspects of the third period. I know you said the first. There were aspects of the third period where they're making this push and there's just not enough runway left in this game that try as they might, they needed this kind of energy sooner. And so I think that there's a lot that the Avs can take away from this because starting with that first period, Tampa set the tone with some of that physicality shown from Chernak on top players like Val Nichushkin that is just, getting uncalled, going unseen. And I think this is an important thing that the Avs have to absorb a little bit more productively because it also goes back to punctuating why not capitalizing on the power play you did get early in the first period is so significant. You're not always going to get these calls, especially if you're like imagining a playoff hockey scenario. So that's really my only additional note from the first period.
I want to circle back to what you just said there about when you're not going to get these calls in a playoff hockey scenario. We don't have to talk about it right now, but I'm going to make a quick note of it that I want to come back to what you just said there because I think that's something that's relevant. But yes, Jake Gensel, late in the first period, Megan, walks out from the goal line. It's on the power play. And look, you're down a man. I understand what's happening there. Sam Malinski's flashing out, try to cover the puck carrier. Josh Manson's covering the guy in the slot. I get it. I just felt like there was something you and I talked about a lot in the preseason leading up. Communication among these at the time, new D pairings and something that we wanted to see continue to improve. I think it's been really good. But again, right there, nobody checks Jake Gensel and even gives any pressure into that lane. He walks right out front, has really all the time in the world. Sam Malinski, Josh Manson end up kind of covering the same guy there in the slot. And given the time left on the clock for the first period, those late goals are just killers, especially ones like that where I just feel like that was a little bit too easy for Jake Gensel. Yeah.
So I also will reiterate what you're saying. Like, I understand what happened here.
Right.
Earlier, Kucherov took the one-timer, and so he went for the shot option from that same place on the ice. So Malinski, because this unfolds right after the draw, he's rightfully trying to immediately engage Kucherov as a shooting threat because he is one and already was one on this same power play. And so I think this goes back to a problem we've kind of talked about with this team. When they're so good, this kind of reverts back to a place where there's a little bit of lack of trust, I think, in Manson to Malinski here. That Kucherov obviously poses such a shooting threat. It's like, even though Malinski's gapping up on him, I think that Manson wanted to be this second layer of defense in that lane to the net. But at that point, I think he had to recognize, right, wrong, or indifferent, Malinski's the guy that's going to be covering Kucherov here. And this is where communication would have been important then. I think communication is a little bit of a theme of an issue in this game for the Avs, who end up either doubling up on assignments and missing others entirely because they're not talking with each other. And so kind of similarly, though this one's a little bit of a fluky one later on the Hagel goal when we get to it, a little bit of a miscue there. And I think there's a little bit of a miscue with even the Gergensons goal, but some of that I felt was apathy more than a miscommunication. Anyways, all that to say, I think that when they're missing some of their regular guys who would be on this PK unit late into the kill, that's why you're seeing Malinski there. He's not usually the guy that's there defending Nikita Kucherov. Because of that, I think there's a little bit of lack of trust, and it unfortunately cost them. So, the takeaway from this would also be, when you are missing guys, the next man up mentality, you have to trust each other a little bit more.
Well, and you have to get back to basics a bit, almost as if you're back at the beginning of the season, where, again, you and I put so much emphasis on that of there's a lot of outside of the the Makar-Taves pairing. You had a lot of guys playing with different guys that they maybe haven't played with before. You need to communicate, and we saw multiple examples of that. And yes, a lot of times it was with young guys, AHL guys in the preseason, but that was just something that you and I stressed so much with so many new faces. And so, yeah, can't end up covering the same guy. You've got to at least give Jake Gensel a moment of pause there. I have written down here, nice early response on a great fourth line shift in a period that was kind of up and down for the fourth line. But give him credit. Great fourth line shift. And if you checked my Twitter and you saw a picture of Charlie the Wiener Dog, that let you know Parker Kelly scored a goal.
The Parker Kelly bat signal. Anytime you see Charlie, something good has happened in Parker Kelly's universe. It's a good omen. You mentioned at the top of the show how we saw so much of the fourth line late in this game, and it kind of points to the ways in which they're spread thin. I think it also pointed to the line that more clearly had their legs under them, and it was the fourth line. They were one of my favorites, if not the favorite, because they played with a lot of energy. I really loved this showing from Bardakov. It was built upon another good showing where I think that he's been really competitive, and that shined through tonight where I felt there was an inconsistency in the level of compete throughout the team. There were highs and lows in this game. So it's not as if the Avs did not come to play altogether. I just think that how Logan O'Connor talks, like, if you're not going to bring your A game, bring your B game. The Avs had lots of moments that were C game, D game. So in addition to A game moments, I thought the energy, though, from that fourth line was consistent and obviously got them into some penalty trouble shortly after the shift. But the other call out I wanted to make note of around this Parker Kelly goal is what I saw from the Olofsson line, right before it, to sort of create this ice and this opportunity. And I think that Olofsson's level of compete, like, he's not showing up in the score sheet as much as we'd like to see him. And that certainly is true. But he was really engaged tonight as well. And it was kind of a long shift for him. What I like about him is he'll stay in the fight. Like, when you think of the guys who are the most effective forecheckers on this team, you're not thinking of Victor Olofsson as the first guy. But I thought that he stayed in it on a long shift because Brent Burns had to keep at the blue line, and he was right back in the fight. And I really respected that because it allowed that fourth line to come on and continue to pressure. And it required a lot of battling to make this goal possible, starting with Bardakov below the goal line. And so I think, even Makar, like, the role he plays on this line is still a valuable one, even if he doesn't get a touch on this puck. He is still yet another net front presence with a log reach to contend with in this moment that Tampa has to make decisions. And so I think, start to finish with this Parker Kelly line and the way that they played this goal from Solovyov, putting the puck back on net from distance because they are battling to shake that puck loose. I think all of it put together, it's another reason why I love Parker Kelly too. He's opportunistic. He can fly a little bit under the radar. And so he gets at that net front to get his stick on this puck and get them back in the fight altogether. So there are a lot of little things I liked about how they start this second period. And it starts with the shift right before this goal.
So I just jotted down in my notes that I want to come back to Victor Olofsson because I got a tweet earlier in the night from a buddy of mine talking about Olofsson, and I know you and I have had conversations about him not on the show, so I want to circle back to Olofsson because I'm glad you brought him up. And yeah, while it may not be on the score sheet, what he contributes to that goal, I'm glad you brought that up. Let's circle back. Really nice penalty kill, a great rush here from Cale Makar, Brock Nelson. That's a great pass from Cale Makar, and then you and I just talked about Brock Nelson a lot on yesterday's show. And a nice shot, gets a little bit of a deflection to trick Andre Vasilevsky, who I thought was great tonight. Brock Nelson keeps rolling here. Really nice play, really nice read from Cale Makar.
Yeah, I like to on the kill. It starts with Drury in his own end being just a little bit, he's fighting with, I believe it's Kucherov. Makar's opposite him also fighting. And so it allows them both, through the power of teamwork, to work this puck away from Kucherov and allow it to transition up ice on the attack. And so I think, the relentlessness of Drury in this situation, there were other moments like this from Drury that I think he had a high level of compete again tonight. And I always like to talk about some of the things on the kill that prevent chances from happening. In this case, it allowed them to create a shorthanded chance that results in a goal, and just beautiful placement from Brock Nelson, who continues to combine so many of the things that he does so well defensively with that puck skill, that is why he's in, the Team USA conversation so solidly, and also why he's wearing a letter, because I kind of like that he's in the mix at the end of this game. He was hungry for it too. Like, there were some guys that were taking the more diplomatic approach by kind of being there available to de-escalate, but not fully getting into the mix there. And Brock Nelson was fully trying to get in the mix. And so I think he is kind of a quiet guy in the locker room, but you see where that level of compete raises on the ice. It's in games like this that do have kind of that playoff hockey feel. And I like to see that kind of passion from him then when the final buzzer sounds, that he is dissatisfied with the way this game finished.
From a volume standpoint, he's a very quiet guy. I'm sure it doesn't come through when you're watching the videos because we try to get the mic right in there and it picks up everything. But he is just a soft-spoken individual, at least with us. But yeah, to your point, clearly a competitor. There was even who was it in Florida? Mikkola, I think he got mixed up with behind the net. And again, just Brock Nelson, good size, not afraid to mix it up. All right, and then Girgensons gets the goal again late in the period to kind of tie things up. I think it's easy to point a finger at Cale Makar here for just a bad read. Honestly, you can tell he thinks Girgenson's going to try to go to the back post, so that's kind of where he's trying to box out, and Girgensson takes advantage of the fact that Cale's not looking at him, slips inside on that coverage, and really has kind of an easy tap in. But again, I don't like as much time and space as you get coming down to make that look. But yeah, you're not going to beat up Cale Makar here. He understands. He knows what happened there. Thought you were going to cover a guy going to the post. He went to the middle of the ice. He just didn't have it.
As always, like, my layered approach is, all right, yeah, Cale Makar definitely at the scene of the crime here. But what I don't like is this was a muck and grind shift from this line on Tampa. And so the Avs were not doing what they needed to do to manage their lanes to get this puck out after the first couple of attempts. There's at least one Pontus Holmberg shot from distance ahead of this, kind of passing play to the net. And that's where it frustrates me is Netchus, I found, was a little bit apathetic in how he engaged on the back check and engaged in trying to tie up some of his lanes, which allowed Tampa to cycle this puck. And that's what created a little bit of this time and space. And then getting back, McKinnon, I felt, didn't also step into this lane and try to take it away to the net in the first place. And so this is kind of like the 5-man unit on the ice. I just felt with a little bit more engagement and a little less apathy, stepping into their lanes, being more aware of their assignments, and honestly just working a little bit harder to break the puck out. I know that's kind of the whole intention, but they allowed this to be a muck and grind shift by not being more engaged. And so ahead of Makar, who I think I would have liked to see maybe even an attempt at a stick lift there with Girgensons getting inside him, I think there's other issues with the play here, because I look at the guys on the ice and it is Marty Netchus and it is Nathan MacKinnon. And there were aspects of McKinnon's game that I thought he was really competitive. But then there were moments like this where this was a game that needed Nathan MacKinnon to be elevated to the level of playoff MacKinnon hockey. And that just wasn't a shift of MacKinnon playoff hockey. And they got the result that they deserved.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great assessment of it. And it drives the point home of like, yes, that's got to be a better play from Cale Makar at the net. But as is always the case, almost always the case, there's usually a couple breakdowns that lead to plays like that are able to put something under a microscope here. And I actually think the third goal, the go-ahead goal, the eventual game winner for the Tampa Bay Lightning, is another example of that where, again, Brandon Hagel kind of ends up all alone. You say, oh, Cale Makar lost his guy. Val Nichushkin takes, look, I get it, a gamble on a loose puck. He's covering his guy. Puck squirts loose, thinks he can win a race. Great play from Nikita Kucherov to get that puck out high. And then you're kind of in a bit of a scramble mode. Cale Makar gets caught a little bit in no man's land in between. Do I follow my guy who's now open for a one-timer, or do I let whoever it was, 41, for the Bolts walk right down the slot and get a clean look? So again, series of small breakdowns. Brock Nelson, and look, I'm not beating him up. It's Nikita Kucherov. Brock Nelson can't get that puck off Kucherov along the wall. That leads to a series of breakdowns. And the puck in the back of the net, not much Scott Wedgwood can do about it.
Yeah, so this is where it's tough, and I won't go fully committed to this part of the analysis where it's like if maybe Nichushkin had a little bit more trust that Nelson was going to knock that puck loose. He might have not been so committed then to helping him in the battle, but it's also not a bad intention that I think Nichushkin was trying to be a second layer of support to Nelson because he is battling with Kucherov. That's a tough customer. So
Right.
that's where it's like 50-50 for me. I don't think Nichushkin necessarily makes the wrong decision here. So when that puck does knock loose, because Nelson does win this battle, at least in that much, Nichushkin's too far away to really do anything with it effectively. And he's also far away from getting back to defend Crozier. So I have no issue kind of with where Nichushkin ends up in this play.
Right.
And then Makar, as a result, is pivoting to turn his attention to the shooting threat of Crozier now, who has the puck. And this is where it gets tricky because Gavin Brindley would have been maybe the additional forward support that is supposed to be getting back here. But he sees Nichushkin going for that loose puck a second ago, or at least trying to support Nelson in that battle. He thinks they're about to go on the attack. He's pulling out high. And so my biggest issue here is with Brindley being a little too eager, chomping at the bit, expecting this to become now a transition play on the rush. And he's now also unable to tend to Crozier. That's where Makar sees that nobody can get to him in time. And that's only because Brindley pulled away too soon. And so I think Makar wouldn't have had to contend with like which assignment do I choose so much if Brindley had stayed a little bit tighter in this play and ready, because he is such a dynamic skater. I think that he could have gotten to Crozier and defended him just fine. And so I'm being so nitpicky here, but this is where like communication, right? Like Brindley, I see where his intention is too, but Nichushkin did not have that puck, so he shouldn't have been quite so eager there, putting everyone then kind of in a bad spot.
Well, and I two things. One, credit to Kucherov as well. That's a nice way. That's a nice puck battle win, and he gets it to an open guy. But, and again, being nitpicky here, but if we're both doing it, I thought there were 2 or 3 plays. What you just mentioned about Gavin Brindley being one of them, where I thought there were some immature plays tonight from Brindley, where it's just like, yeah, that you got to be a half step better than that. Make a decision quicker than that. You got to take a better look than that. And again, we talked about it on a different show, and I know you feel a little bit different. I feel like Brindley I think he's going to benefit from the Olympic break in the same way that Sam Malinsky benefited from the Four Nations break last season, where, hey, this is a young kid who made the roster. I mean, Gavin Brindley's been kind of like playing individual playoff hockey since like the rookie tournament. We're just like trying to make the team, trying to stay there. And I think to me, looks like he's hit a little bit of a wall, and I think it's led to some sloppy play. I think he's going to benefit from a break.
I think he'll benefit from a break because, like, even in looking at tonight, kind of some highs and lows in his game where I felt like some of the risk, it made a lot of sense. And there was also, too, like, late in this game, he had the puck in the offensive zone, no support quite yet, so he's got a guy coming in. He makes the decision to, kind of lose the puck and protect himself. And I was just thinking of you when he did it, because I saw that they're chasing this game, right? Like they are 1 goal deficit. They're chasing it. He could have made a riskier decision there, and he opted to protect himself instead. So it's highs and lows for me right now with Gavin Brindley. And I could see him coming back from the break and like reining his game in a little bit, because I don't want him to lose the parts of his game that are creative and fun. But I do think there's like, what he does in traffic, for example, I think can be high risk, high reward. But there's also a reason our parents tell us not to play in traffic, right? And so I think Gavin Brindley just needs a second to regroup, reset, simplify some parts of his game, make the safer decisions, especially in his own end, and looking at where some things went wrong tonight. And he can still have fun when he comes back.
And again, want to reiterate, like you're talking about a 20-year-old kid here who made the team out of camp, like you expect some highs and lows. All right. And then you get the empty netter. I'm just going to start running through some of my notes here. If there's anything that you want to add on or have anything else to say, go ahead. We talked about the fourth line getting some shifts late. I think that's, multiple things here, Megan. I think that's a result of, hey, you're down a couple bodies that maybe you weren't anticipating being down at the beginning of the trip. you're tired, your legs are a little bit heavy. But I also think that was a little bit of a reward that Jared Bednar noticed that while they had some shifts where they struggled, that seemed to be a line that had some pop tonight.
Yeah, I think they earned the extra looks in part because when they were on the ice, there was energy and there was a high level of compete. I think the incentive too for Bardakov, it's obvious what's there. He's playing to stay in the lineup, and so this means a little more to him than just the team coming away with a win. Though I'm sure, especially looking at the way that he plays, that is at the center of what he's doing. But there's this additional motive of trying to demonstrate why he deserves to be back in the lineup full time ahead of a player like Brindley. So there's some internal competition storyline kind of at play here. And so what's interesting, because I still really like what Brindley brings, and I think it's different. This did feel like playoff hockey in a lot of ways. And I think it's safe to say Tampa's a team that is going to be playing playoff hockey. So keeping that in mind, it is kind of good to evaluate what players do under this kind of pressure when they are chasing games, and to see Bardakov elevate his game and stay competitive start to finish, it does bode well then for his chances coming out of it.
Well, and not only, I wanted to say as a quick side note, not only did I like his game, I liked his energy. He did have the one, it's his flaw. Took a couple bad penalties. I just wanted to say here, I did not, and I was talking with my buddy last night, I did not like the goalie interference call that he got. Was that Carolina? Yeah, it was against Freddie Anderson. Look, I know there's a rule there to protect guys from just running goalies when they're standing stationary trying to make a play on a puck. But I thought that was two guys trying to get to a puck. And I just don't agree. Like, both guys get tangled up and go down. I don't think that should be a call on Bardakov. Freddie Anderson or any goalie is coming out to play the puck. You're not in the crease. Again, I'm not advocating for guys to be able to take runs at goalies at full speed. But I don't think incidental contact like that should, favor the goaltender there. You're out of the crease. You're making a play on the puck. So I just want to say at least one of those penalties I don't like. But he's also in a lineup with a guy like Taylor McCarr, who I'm not necessarily saying Taylor McCarr is coming to take Bardakov's spot, but that's just another young guy who's hungry, who's looking for ice time in the NHL that you're kind of bumped up next to. Taylor McCarr gets back in on this road trip because of some injuries. What did you think of him, not just tonight, but in the couple games he got in here on this trip? I was happy that he got to play in a Nordiques game. I thought that was cool for him.
Yeah, and he registers a block shot and a blocked attempt. So he's trying to make the most of limited minutes. And I think where I'm at with Taylor McCarr is he's still in that building stage to becoming in the conversation of full-time NHLer. But with every new opportunity that I get to see him in, I think he looks more and more settled, to include tonight. And so I thought he looked like an NHL player, like he could hang with the NHL players, including the physicality, because this was an area of Tampa's game that they were not going to, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, they were going to go easy on him, right?
Right.
And he stood up to it just fine. And so I know that when you're talking about a guy that you want in your lineup full time, just being able to handle physicality is like not enough. But it's a good starting point. And so I think that he's looking more settled. And I think the way that he plays fits the identity of that Avs fourth line so well. That's why we got to see a little bit more of it tonight. So, short of putting him in a lineup full time, I think he's doing everything that he possibly could with these opportunities to prepare for that one day.
And I really agree with what you said there about he fits the identity of where they have him in the lineup. And I think that's why he's maybe getting more looks than what people expected, or getting more looks in favor of guys that, maybe seem like the more obvious, flashy kind of call up. I think Taylor McCarr fits an identity and a mold of a player that they're looking for, and the work he's put in and the people he's worked with, I think is something that resonates with Jared Bednar. Quick note, don't need to talk much about it. Sam Girard, based on the replay, to me, Megan, it looked like he actually took a butt end to the face. It looked like he caught the stick right under the eye. He went and got it stitched up or fixed up, came back. He was fine. I just wanted to make sure to call that out, because it was definitely, he went down and was in some duress. Evan Rawle pointed out that he thought maybe Girard's a contact swearer, and it looked like maybe his contact got messed up. But it looked to me, based on the replay, like the hand came up in the palm of the hand with the stick in it, got him right under the eye.
Man, I thought it was an elbow. So I maybe just didn't look at it, or I saw what I wanted to see so that I could be outraged.
Well, it looked like an elbow initially, but to me, it looked like he continued going, and it looked like on the bench, Girard had a little cut right here. So that was what it looked like to me. But could be
that
wrong.
Would be hard for an elbow to do. But
right.
I don't know. Maybe he's got some weird elbow pads.
Hey, they started changing some of those a few years ago because they were like, these are getting closer to weapons than anything else. And really, we should just wait to talk about it fully on Friday, so we don't have to spend a ton of time here. But we do need to park a minute to talk about the power play. It struggles again tonight. But, Megan, like I really am at the point where, like, honestly, I just don't really care that much. Like, this is a really good 5-on-5 team. It's a really good 5-on-5 team. And I wrote it down when you said earlier, when you're in those games where you're not getting the calls, when you're in like a playoff-like scenario, and I think that's what you're really looking at here. Yes, you want the power play to be together, and I know people have PTSD from last year where the power play didn't show up great, and Dallas's did, and was seemingly scoring at will. It really puts it under a microscope, and I know that's why a lot of people feel the way they do. I'm just not like, yeah, it didn't look great. You want to find a way for it to be better, but it's just not bothering me in the way that I think it's bothering a lot of other folks. It's going to come and go. It just doesn't bother me. I'd rather be a good 5-on-5 team.
It does bother me, and it's because it bothers Jared Bednar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he is a man who says what he means, and he maybe doesn't come out and say it as dramatically, but like, if he reveals to you that something is of concern to him, then it's definitely of concern. It carries a decent amount of weight. And so the fact that he's said as much carries weight in my eyes too. And not just that, but obviously the playoff implications, because like, similarly, in talking about this game felt like a playoff game, and the difference between them winning it could have been one power play. It's like, you're just looking back at the Dallas series, like, that's exactly how that played out. That was the thing keeping them from it, because like 5v5, I thought that, not that the Avs were a better team against Tampa. I don't think that. I'm thinking more so to Dallas, like, when they would get behind in games, the pushback process-wise, 5v5, there wasn't anything more that they could have done. Mm-hmm. It was puck luck and an unbelievable, unsustainable power play on Dallas's side, right, and a slightly fallible PK that was otherwise good, like in the regular season. So, like, I'm less worried about where the PK will play into playoff storylines at this point. I'm just looking ahead, maybe prematurely. It's just, we are past the halfway point of the season, and I haven't seen the Avs power play be consistently good, but I have seen it be consistently bad. It's felt like its good has come in little glimpses. And then when they try to recreate what has made it successful, it's really hard for them to recreate it. And sometimes I think it's because they stray from it almost immediately. Right. So all that to say, I am a little bit worried. But where I'm a little less worried is the context of they've lost parts of their power play options in Landeskog and Taves. And so it's already looking a little bit different. Like, I think if they had both those players available to them, this would be the time to start seeing some different looks, but now they can't afford to quite the same way. So it's like, granted them a little bit more allowances in the meantime, but it's such a short leash right now. And it is stressing me out.
So I'm gonna play devil's advocate, and I'm gonna do that in knowing that, like, I am in the great minority in the way that people feel about the power play. Like you said, even Jared Bednar said it's concerning. But, you mentioned, like, you see this game here tonight that feels like a playoff game, and maybe the difference would have been one power play goal. And, like, you're totally right. And that's where I step back and look at the body of work of the season. It's like, yeah, but if you're looking at this season in 7-game chunks, like, fuck, they're in pretty good shape, even with the power play not performing the way it needed to. So, like, I think there is a level, and again, I'm not defending the power play or saying that any of the concerns you just laid out. And I actually have one additional concern that I'm going to add to what you're saying. The one thing that I feel is slightly worrisome, but I do feel like on the whole of the season, the penalty kill has offset it. And that was something that, to you, what you pointed out for Dallas's unsustainable power play, that was something they didn't have going for them that really punctuated deficiencies on the power play in that series. And I just look at it and say, yes, it's frustrating. You'd like it to be better, but I do feel like we as a whole have a bit of confirmation bias where it's like, tonight it finally caught up to them. It's like, all right, that's once across a whole season. That being said, everything you said is valid. What?
For the penalty kill?
For the power play not producing, like, all right, tonight it caught him.
I feel like it's caught him a lot of nights, but they just haven't relied on it to win.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is, like, they've proven even with this terrible power play, they can overcome it. And that's why I'm just not worried about it. Like, I'm just like, it caught them tonight. Finally, they didn't win one and they could have used a power play goal.
But, like, imagine the quality of competition here. Now, the Avs have seen really good teams throughout the season and have a very impressive body of work. But, like, in a 7-game series, you're getting the same team over and over again, and they're playing playoff hockey. And so in my eyes, this road trip is actually, like, a good example of playoff hockey series. Sure. Like, because these have been 3 really good teams. Now, second leg in a back-to-back is kind of a weird one there, but they're 3 really good teams. So that's probably truer to playoff hockey and, like, what you would experience in a 7-game playoff series. And they've lost Landeskog. Honestly, there's so many variables here. This is a bad experiment. But do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah. No, and
how this is like,
what?
How this is a little more
For sure. And again, so here, what I was going to add, what is worrying to me, and I believe Jared Bednar talked about this when he said the other day, like, I'm concerned. What's worrying about it to me is how you've now gotten into, like, kind of a lot of different looks. You've tried a lot of different personnel. You've moved guys around. You've tried lefties, righties. You've tried separating Netchus and Nate. And again, like you said, that experiment didn't get to last as long as they probably would have liked it to, because you lose Gabe Landeskog. Beside the point. That's the part to me is like, ugh. There's clearly a larger issue here. It's not personnel. That's the part to me where I look at it and go, I don't even know what to point to fix it right now. That's the part that's worrying to me. And I guess my point is, like, and I'm trying to pull up the schedule here, because again, I totally hear what you're saying, and I think it's completely valid. But I think there's been plenty of stretches that they've played recently where it's like, yeah, you could say that's pretty close to playoff hockey. And again, it's like they've overcome it. Last year in that playoff series, they couldn't overcome it because they also couldn't keep the puck out of their net on the penalty kill. And so now, again, that's a high wire act. That's a hell of a gamble to make. I'm sure our penalty kill will continue being the best in the league, which means we can get away with this terrible power play. I'm not saying I want to make that gamble. My point is just, I think this is a group that's talented enough that they can figure it out. And they've shown to this point, they're a really, really good 5-on-5 team. And to the point you made off the top, that's where playoff hockey is won and lost 90% of the time, is who's the better 5-on-5 team, because that's what you're playing pretty much the whole game, especially the later and later you get, which is another reason why Dallas seems to run out of steam, because you're not getting 5 power plays a night.
And I think it's tough because, like, I'm imagining you're getting the tightest defense then, and so the goals would be a little harder to come by, even 5v5. Like, I think that's where the Avs ran into a little bit of trouble despite having really strong 5v5 play in the Dallas series. And so when it came down to that thin margin for error and for success. It's like it did sometimes become the difference of a power play being the thing to get you the goal. Now, if they'd like to continue to score shorthanded, if they actually want to perfect that new idea, they just put the PK out on the next man advantage. Put
done.
Brock
Easy.
Nelson, Valachushkin.
And yeah, like, it's Vaguely's got a comment here saying like it is the personnel. They're on another power play coach. Nothing's changing. And so like I get it. Like I get what people are saying. And like I've gotten plenty of comments and DMs and stuff like what you were just saying of like, oh, put guys like Parker Kelly. And I'm not saying that that's not something you can't explore, putting a guy like that in front, but like,
I'm kidding.
What?
I'm kidding.
No.
I will let you finish your thought.
Oh, no. And I know you are. I just again, I don't even think it's a crazy thought to say do that. Like we've seen, whatever that was a few years ago, the Edmonton Oilers used a guy like Zach Cassian in there. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying you look at the guys that are available to them for a role like that. Again, Vaguely, our guy here in the chat saying, put someone in front of the goalie that has a big badonkadonk to screen. You got guys like Val Nichushkin, Brock Nelson.
Are you saying they have big badonkadonks?
Hey, I'm not saying, or I'm not saying that. My point is, Gabe Landeskog, like you've got big guys that are going there. Like, I get the sentiment that people make. I seriously had someone last week that said, put the fourth line on the power play. And it's like, I just wouldn't do that.
I just wouldn't do that. So I don't know if we want to save this for the Friday show, but I don't think it's Hackstall. I think there is an aspect of this that we have to address first, and that is the seniority and respect that is owed to the core of McKinnon and Makar on the power play that I think dictates a lot of what happens with it. It's not new or secret that they have a huge say in the power play. They take a lot of pride and ownership of it and what happens with it, to which I think that some of finding Hackstall for the job was like, how willing is he to work with these star players?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that limits then some of the overhaul that you're going to see on this power play. And so maybe that's where push comes to shove. But I think it would sooner start with the core being willing to make more drastic changes than it would with firing Hackstall. Because you won't see anyone come in and make sweeping changes so long as that, I don't want to call it an issue, but so long as that precedent with the core exists. And similarly, I think Hackstall has had more of a positive impact away from the power play than he gets credit for, that it would be hard then to see them just part ways with the way in which he has helped players with their individual games. Like I've, now heard from Bednar talk about how Hackstall has sat down with Marty Netches, Parker Kelly, that whole line of, Brindley, I think it was Bardakov at a different point. And they've gone on to have like incredibly effective, impressive nights after working one-on-one with Hackstall. And so I have no skin in the game. Like I'm not some pro Hackstall supporter. I just think there's more going on behind the scenes with the power play and how these decisions get made than maybe we're giving credit. If we're just so quickly wanting to see Hackstall gone, I don't think that will address the root of the, I'll put it in quotes, problem, the way people think.
I completely, let's save that for the Friday show, because I think there's a lot to unpack there, and I think you're completely spot on. And people have heard me say it. I don't want to be the shoot it guy, but I really do think that there's I think you could improve your power play a lot if guys were put in a 3-pass rule. Pass the puck 3 times and someone has to shoot it.
Yeah, and maybe, there's a pride component of like, I'm above that. I'm not in youth hockey anymore, but maybe we need to go back to the basics, right, and put Parker Kelly on the
Hey, I'm willing to try anything. All right, let's fly through these last few. Brock Nelson wearing a letter tonight. No Taves, no Landeskog. Again, we said earlier, he's a soft-spoken guy with us, but that says something about, what kind of leader he is in that locker room.
Yeah. I mean, you know how I feel about Brock Nelson, and I like the passion he showed late in this game. I like, it still results in a goal against, but the battle with Kucherov, he is coming away with that puck more or less. Like, he's knocking it loose from him, ultimately. And then similarly, his goal on the penalty kill. Those are really high skill. Like, and I think that the Tampa player gets a little bit of it that causes it to change angle ever so slightly too, but just a really well played shot from Brock Nelson. So the way he contributes to the game in power play, penalty kill, and then what he's doing 5v5, it makes sense why that would be an extension of your leadership core. And also he was the captain with the Islanders, so like he kind of knows how to be a leader.
Scott Wedgwood played all 3 games on this trip, including the back-to-back. I thought he kept them in all 3 games. All 3 games were close. Tonight is just the second time the Avs, obviously they win the first game of the trip, but this is the second time this season the Avs lose by more than 1 goal, and that second one came with the empty net. Your thoughts on Wedgwood on this trip?
Yeah, it was a hard ask too, back-to-back starts like that. So I have no issue with the way in which he stepped up, and I think he gave them a chance to win every night, this game included. It wasn't perfect, but there were parts of this game, sorry, I'm getting stressed out remembering it, back and forth chances, right? They're just trading chances, and so it would be a skater or at least Tampa having numbers in more or less alone on Scott Wedgwood, and maybe there were guys getting back, but they didn't really effectively take away any sort of lane. And so Wedgwood did have to come up with that save, and he did. So there were points tonight that the Avs didn't make Wedgwood's life any easier. They kind of made it a little harder than necessary for him. And so it stressed me out remembering it again. But in praising Scott Wedgwood, he did come up with those saves.
Made a really big save on the penalty kill as well. Really nice glove save on a shot from right in the slot. Again, I'm running through a list here, and so this feels like a side swipe, but it was just how my notes came out. I didn't like Manson tonight. There were 3 times in particular where I made a note where I just thought bad coverage, bad read, and obviously the first one we talked about with the Jake Gensel goal. There were just a couple times tonight where I just thought he looked a little out of sorts. Not a big deal. You get a couple of those games a season from Manson. He talks about it. He says, hey, I just didn't have it tonight. And I just did not love his game tonight.
Yeah, I think too, what stood out to me was obviously hold on, where are my notes? Yeah, it's the first goal against the Gensel goal. It's a similar breakdown between both Manson and Malinsky, where, like when Malinsky got beat by Sam Bennett in the Florida game, I felt like Manson was like kind of caught off guard and wasn't effective then in getting back as another layer of support. Again, it starts with Malinsky losing the battle. Like, I'm not blaming this on Manson, but it just felt like there was something that a little bit off in both games with respect to like how he can best support Sam Malinsky when they're on the ice together. And it was just a little bit weird because I think of him as the leader of those two when they're on the ice, right? Like, that's going to be the guy that someone like Malinsky should be able to turn to, and they should be able to support one another. And it just felt like through these 2 games, something's just been a little bit off with Manson. And I don't know. I'm not going to make a bigger deal out of it, but I can reaffirm what you were seeing tonight and not totally loving Manson's game.
And like I said, that feels like a sideswipe given how random it is in these notes, but hey, it's not up to me how the notes come out, right? It's how the thoughts come to your brain.
Come out.
You know what? I was going to say Olofsson, but do you want to save that for Friday as well? Because that might be a larger conversation because I think you and I also, this is another one that you and I just see it. We see the Tomas Tatar comparables, and it's like, I just don't see it that way. I think he's effective. He's doing good things away from the puck. With like a little bit more production, but it's just not bothering me.
No, I'm the same way. So we can save to talk about it on Friday, because then we'll have also the benefit of the Thursday game against Ottawa, and just something else to add newly there. Because outside of what I already said about Olsen in this game, and I thought that there was a high level of engagement and compete in battles that he doesn't get credit for, because he's not coming away from these battles a victor every time, but he's also not getting smoked in them either. And so I think that, given his style of play, he's still effective for what he is. And we could talk about it on Friday.
Yeah, perfect. We covered the fact that the Avs, just kind of look tired tonight. My last note here is I wanted to give, I guess I got one more after this. Andre Vasilevsky, huge credit. I thought he was really, really sharp early on tonight. And honestly, he made a couple saves, had a couple, really nice pushes there early. He just looked sharp on top of his crease, big. It just did not look like there was a lot of room early. And I said, oh boy, the Avs might be in it here if this is a Vasi game. And I just thought he was fantastic. Made life hard for the Avs.
Yeah, I like Vasi. I think he's an excellent goaltender. And same is true tonight. Like, the Avs came away with high danger chances 12-8 in favor of them when it's all said and done. And so I think that some of the quality of their chances got better in the second and third period, testing him more. And this is where, it reminded me of playoff hockey, is like the goalies can sometimes just get better as the game gets on. And so your ability to get those goals, it kind of reaches an impossibility at some point when the goalie's just feeling it. So I think that Tampa did a lot to support Vasi too, outside of how the Parker Kelly goal happened. I think that was the Avs making hay when the sun shined there with the fourth line, but it was hard to come by otherwise.
You almost need deflections like the one that Brock Nelson got there on that goal to beat goalies like Vasilevsky. It's not a popular opinion among Avs circles, but you've heard me say it. I do think Andre Vasilevsky is the best goalie that's ever played to this point. I just think he's a blast to watch. You just don't see guys that big, move that well, be that flexible, playing goalie, and he's a blast to watch. Last thing that I had, that scrum at the end of the game, it's all the top guys. Like you said, it was Nelson, it was Netchus, it was McKinnon. I think you like to see that fire from your top guys. They didn't, not that they have a bunch of fourth line grinders, but they didn't send guys out there to go get into scrums. It was your top guys. They played right to the end. And I think you just like to see that push.
Yeah, there was a moment in game 2 where Lecky was making a play at the net. It was whistled. I think, Vasi had the save. And one of the Tampa guys grabbed him by his scruff like a misbehaving kitten. And it was so disrespectful. And Nate was furious. And I was just so glad that Nate was also so upset seeing him handle Lehkonen like this. And so I think that boiled over into what we saw, because it was the same guy. I don't remember if it was Chernak doing it.
Chernak and Nichushkin were getting into it too.
Because they were into it early, and Chernak was just kind of getting on my nerves generally. Either way, I think Nate was still upset about how Lehkonen was handled improperly there.
Handled improperly. Oh, my goodness. All right. That's going to do it for me. Do you got anything else?
No. Caitlin in the chat is right. She said earlier they just need to reset and regroup, because I am a little sad that they lost.
They someone did point out though, and I meant to pull it up. Dallas Stars get a tough one in Carolina, 6-3. So technically, if you want to call it chasing, the team chasing the Avs also took a regulation loss tonight. So there you go. All right. I think that's going to do it.
Perfect.
We'll be back at it. We've got some content coming from Loveland that we're going to go up there and round up tomorrow. And then we'll be back at it with the Avs the next day. It's a full off day for them. Back for a game day on Thursday. Pod on Friday. That's going to do it. She's Megan. I'm Jesse. My wife's around here somewhere, so let's say she's behind the glass technically. Shout out Hannah. And that does it. Have a good one, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.